Right, this is wood. Sorry, just get a pen. Might help before I started. And is that gonna work? No. Right, this isn't a good start. Right, I guess this will have to do. Okay, so apart from that, not a very good start. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the equilibrium. Now, we're not doing basic demand and supply equilibriums. What we're doing today is we're doing aggregate supply and aggregate demand. However, the first one we're going to come across is, you probably will have seen it before in terms of supply and demand actions. The labels and axes are generally different on this one, but it looks the same. So we're going to start off with an easy one of combining short run aggregate supply with aggregate demand. So just put equilibrium at the top. So let's draw a standard diagram. I'm going to draw these big and I'll rub them off. So along the bottom, for the basic demand and supply diagram, we would have quantity demanded and supplied. However, we're not just looking at one good, so the quantity demanded and supplied of different goods may be different. So we add all the demanded and supply up to get GDP, which is, we measure it in terms of real, which you can look at the economic growth video for that. So real GDP goes on the bottom, and a similar thing with the price. Before we were talking about a given price level, but you don't sell every good at one price level. What you do is you sell at an average price level, which is a combination of all the prices, and to give an average price throughout the whole of the economy of all the goods and services that we as consumers buy. And there's many ways of working that out, but we'll just go with a theory that's already been worked out. So we've got average price level on the vertical axis, and on the so the essence of the two axes are pretty much the same for the standard aggregate demand diagram and the standard demand diagram and standard supply diagram. So how can we evolve this into something a little bit more advanced? Well, we've got the short run aggregate supply curve, which again just basically looks like a standard supply curve, and it slopes upwards. We should have already covered this in a early video, but if you can't be bothered watching that early video, basically the reason why it slopes upwards is in the short run we can't increase our factors of production. So what firms do instead is say, oh well, you can work overtime, and that's great, but you have to pay the workers a higher wage, which increase your cost of production, as also your resources become scarce, etc, etc. But you have to pay the workers overtime, which is what we're going to focus on, and that increases the price of producing more units. So you have to sell them at a price to maintain profit margins if you're a firm, for example. So, but obviously with doing that, it encourages actually people to, if they want to get more pay, they work overtime. So they might say during the day they are less productive, so that they get that extra pay as they were asked to work overtime, which could work against the business during the day, for example. So you could have different ways of measuring that. So yeah, we've got short run aggregate supply, which is the same way as saying supply, and then we've got aggregate demand, which is the same as saying demand, but it's not. I'm just illustrating it in the context of F581. This is F582. We need to keep them completely separate, but I'm just showing you where these sort of values and things come from. So hopefully you've got that. We've got an average price level P, and that gives us our equilibrium, or the intersect. And instead of putting Q, we put Y because it's real GDP. So that is the income, national income. So hopefully, if you can't see the values, there's just P and Y at the moment on the diagram. Now if we were to, say, increase the price, average price level to P1, sorry, Y1 here, you've got two Y1s, and is that the right way to label it? Sorry, Y2. Yeah, so these are the values. So at this P1, we've got a quantity, a national income of Y1, and what will be demanded in the economy, and Y2, what will be supplied. The suppliers want to supply at a high price, so they're willing to supply more, but the amount of consumer expenditure, investment, and net exports and government spending is only willing to supply it at Y1, demand at Y1, sorry. So we have excess supply. Now when we have excess supply, we have excess stock, and to get rid of that stock, they sell at a lower price, so hence that's why we go from P to P1 when we're reducing our price. So in here we've got excess supply. It should look quite familiar, this diagram. So all we do is move down to E. Oh, let's look at a lower price of P1, P2 even. Yeah, should work out. So at P2 we've got a quantity, a real output, national output of Y1, and a real national output of Y2. Y1 of this one refers to the short run output supply curve, as that's how much is willing to be supplied. But at Y2, that's how much is the consumer is willing to demand, because obviously with a lower price level they can demand more of it, hence the real national output for aggregate demand is a bit further, a bit more. So if we've got demand outstripping supply, so we've got demand larger than supply, what we have is we have excess demand. So I just put it over here, excess demand. Now to combat that, as we've got more demand than there is, firms can put up the prices and still get rid of the amount of stock they want to. So we increase the price from P2 to P. Now there was a more in-depth analysis that you could do for that. Sorry, just try and find the bubble cut, and I'll sort of go through one for shortcut with an aggregate supply diagram in a minute. You just find that. Do have it somewhere. Just give us a minute. So yeah, hopefully should be in here somewhere. Oh, that isn't very good. I can't seem to see it. Oh, God's sake. It's a mess, it really is. Right. Looks like we're just going to go ahead without it. Okay, so that's the basic equilibrium diagram there. So you could, yeah, and you just explain what I said there. There's nothing much to explain other than that, because it's just a basic one. Now, as we know, there's two types of long run aggregate supply. We've got the Keynesian, which it says that wages are sticky downwards, and we've got the classical, which economists think that wages work perfectly. So if a firm wants to, if there's unemployment, then wages will decrease immediately, because they imagine that the labour equilibrium will, markets work really well in the eye. So there's a straight line, they're always operating at full capacity. So we can apply this to the long run equilibrium. Now this is again just quite a basic one. So you've got aggregate demand, you've got short run aggregate supply. Oh wait, no, sorry, wrong one. Not doing that yet. So yeah, classical. Sorry, my drawing is really bad. LRAS, as it's a long run aggregate supply. You've got aggregate demand there. You've got a line going down. It's that equilibrium where they meet, where supply equals demand, or long run aggregate supply equals aggregate demand. So we've got a price level P and a real national output Y. So this is a real GDP. I'll draw a big diagram in a minute and then I'll have to keep rubbing the diagram off. Average price. So that's the basic long run aggregate supply curve for classical. Now if we increase that, which we will do later on, it does show you that all four macroeconomic objectives are achieved. So that's and I'm going to draw next to this the Keynesian long run aggregate supply curve in terms of equilibrium side by side, so you can get a bit of an idea. Now I'm not going to draw label the axes, I should do, but hopefully you can just imagine them as both on the same size, because it's going to be quite trouble to fit it all on. And that was it. You didn't help me at all there. Rubbish. So you've got the long run aggregate supply curve. If you don't get why this slopes as it does, you can just check my other videos. I'm sure you want to. I'll just label it into the three sections. May not be perfectly split into the three that it should be, but you get an idea. So aggregate demand always slopes downwards. Always slopes the same way. Aggregate demand. I've done that through the right point. Yeah. So you can see that's how they look. All we've done is put an aggregate. LRS one. All we've done is put an aggregate demand line in there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to shift these two aggregate demand curves. Now I'm going to do it in a big one and we'll do it singularly, so we can go through each one. And then as we're going through one, I'll explain the difference of the other one. Hopefully that showed you the two different curves, and now I'm not going to draw both of them now, I'm just going to draw one throughout, so we'll keep a big diagram so you can clearly see there's no little hints or parts of the diagram where you think, what's he done there, that nutter or weirdo, whatever you want to call it. So you've got real GDP on the bottom, as we always do. I mean, that could be referred as real national output, but depends what you want to call it. Average price on the vertical axis. We went through them before, so if you don't get them, we can just nip back. Now we're gonna the first one we're gonna do, just checking which order it is. We're gonna go through the classical, the classical long run aggregate supply. And the aggregate supply shifting to the right. So we've got long run aggregate supply, we've got aggregate demand, and we've got aggregate demand curve 1. This is the aggregate demand curve shifting to the right. So we put a little arrow here, a little arrow here, just in case your marker thinks, what was he done? It's a bit thick. I'll see you not. P1. And this is YF. So, what can we surmise from this diagram then? Well, this is perfectly vertical because we're assuming no matter what you do with the price, no matter what you do with it, we're assuming that it's straight because the economy is always at full capacity, so no matter what you do with the price, it's not going to increase output of the economy. What you're actually going to need to do is shift the LRAS curve from there to there, which will increase the real national output. We'll go into that in a minute, so don't worry if you didn't get that. So how can we explain this diagram? Well, the first thing we can talk about is the increase in price. Oh wait, no, actually, sorry. The first thing we're going to talk about, when you explain one of these diagrams, you always say there's been an increase in aggregate demand as the aggregate demand curve shifted from AD to AD1. And you say this is shifted rightwards because of an increase in aggregate demand. If you're reading from a case study, then you clearly label which component of aggregate demand it is, and if you can label which determinant of that determinant is. So for example, consumer expenditure might be, determinant of that might be disposable income, so consumers spend more, therefore aggregate demand increases. An example for you to take away, take home, put it in a suitcase, send it off to Mexico, get some disease, bring it back, spread it across the country, all good. Obviously you won't do that. So, the LRAS curve there, it looks quite smart. So we've said the AD curve shifts to AD1 because of an increased aggregate demand, and then we label, well we don't label it when we're explaining it, but we say the price has increased from P to P1. And you say what that represents. Now an increase in price represents an inflation. Inflationary pressure has occurred in the economy. And this is from P to P1. However, you also state that because there's a long run aggregate supply curve in terms of the classical economist, we assume that the only way to increase national output is by shifting the long run aggregate supply curve to the right. All we've done here is increase the price. We've not moved it. An increase in price just causes a movement along the curve, which is all we've done is moved it up. So you say the real national output has not increased. However, your valuative statement, your statement at the end is the increase in price, or the increase in inflationary pressure is, which sounds a bit more interesting, is dependent on the magnitude of the shift of the aggregate demand curve. And obviously, let's draw another shift here, AD2. And obviously this is going to have a large price level, P2, but it's still going to correspond with a price level of YF. And that tells you all it's done is increase the price each time. Now hopefully I proved that to you there. So we can go on to our next diagram now. Oh great, I've rubbed that off, didn't need to. So draw the diagram again. Actually I did because I needed to rub out the labels. Okay, so just put GDP and average price. So we've got average price and real GDP. So what we're going to do now? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to do a similar thing, except this time we're going to do it with a Keynesian long run aggregate supply curve. So it's going to look a bit more difficult, but trust me, it's the same sort of explanation you when you talk about it. Okay, so we draw our standard long run aggregate supply curve for the Keynesian. So let's draw that. Now I have left, you might see this, a long period here where there doesn't seem to be any curvature in the graph. Now this is precisely because I'm going to be drawing a few aggregate demand lines. So this is still RAS. That's still the same. I'm going to draw it off. I put the 3 sections in. So only 2 lines, 3, 2. put that bit more over, sorry. So anything up here is full capacity, intermediate range and unused capacity. I'm just going to go through just a minute why it goes like that. So the long run aggregate supply curve, wage sticky downwards, so at the unused capacity you've got loads of workers, loads of machinery lying idle, so you can pay the workers a low wage rate and you don't have to buy any new capital equipment. But as you start to use up your resources and scarce resources, you have to pay more for them. This increases the price of production, so firms pass on these higher costs of production onto the consumer in the form of a higher price, which is why it slopes upwards. And then when you can't produce any more, all you can do is increase the price, which is why the long run aggregate supply curve eventually goes vertical and they become the same, the classical and the Keynesian. So hopefully that's just gone a little bit over it if you didn't understand it. So let's draw aggregate demand curve 1. You need it right to the left, AD, and P should be there, and that corresponds with the level Y. Now that just line, don't need to put much. These lines are just labelling sections. Let's get rid of them so it doesn't confuse you with the price level stuff. So that's price level P and a real national output of Y. Now I'm going to draw another diagram here. Yeah, sorry. So I'm going to draw it just next to it, still on the straight bit. So this is where the classical and the Keynesian are different. Classical says any increase in aggregate demand will increase inflation, inflationary pressure on the economy, but it won't increase national output. What you actually need to do is shift the supply curve to the right, and we use supply side policies for that. But as you can see here, we've increased real national output from Y to Y1 should be Y to Y1. We haven't actually increased the price. The price still stayed at P, but all we've done is shifted the aggregate demand curve to the right, and that's increased real national output, as you can see there. However, when it starts to curve upwards, let's do one up there. So just as it starts curves a little bit. Sorry, that should be straight. Yeah. Just trying to be a bit clever there. Right. So this is AD1. This is AD2. So it's shifted to the right. Just put that to the right, and now we've actually increased price here. So as we're starting to get closer to full capacity, so as we're starting to use up our resources, we start to increase the price of the goods and services. So as it's flat and we're not using, we've still got plenty of spare capacity, so we start to get past the point and closer to full capacity, we start to use up our scarce resources. And the more scarce resources we use up, it increases the price because there's less of them in the economy. As you know, people outbid each other for the products, such as oil, and this corresponds with a price level, national output of Y2. As you can see, now we've increased real national output considerably, and what we've done is we increased it from Y to Y1 for the first aggregate demand shift, and the second aggregate demand shift, when it starts to use up resources, the price increases to P1, and the real national output increases to Y2. So you can see, once we start using up our scarce resources, we start to see this pattern of the price increasing as the Keynesian, as the classical said, but there's still an increase in real national output of the economy. Now you would still use the same sort of explanation. I could draw another 6 lines there and show that, but it just becomes the same as the classical long run aggregate supply curve when it gets past full capacity. I was just showing you. I think I only need to draw 3 there. So you can still say that for the short bit, when the aggregate demand curve shifts to the right, there is no increase in price when our resources there's plenty of plenty of resources not scarce. So the price doesn't increase, but we have an increase in real national output, and the shift of the aggregate demand curve could be caused by one of the determinants, as we said before. So the explanation is kind of the same for these diagrams, and obviously, yeah. So we've done the price, what shifts it, and then we say when after we've said the cause of the shift, then we say what the shift is from Y to Y1 or Y to Y2, Y1 to Y2. We say, yeah, and then we say depending on the magnitude, this depends on the increase in the real national output. But then for this part, we say when we start using up our scarce resources, the price increases and the real national output also increases. But when we get past full capacity, all we're doing is increasing the price. So hopefully you've got that. I mean, that was just a basic explanation, really. There wasn't much to that explanation. Probably missed out a few bits here and there, but the gist of the explanation was there. You just need to put that into your own words or whatever your teacher wants you to do. Oh, we're nearly there. Don't worry, we're nearly done. So the next thing we need to do is pick up that rubber. Don't worry, it's only 26 minutes in. So we've got plenty of time to use up on the control. Right. Okay. So we've talked about the shift of the of aggregate demand in both diagrams, and obviously we said before, when it's unused capacity, all we're doing is increasing national output, we're not increasing price. But what about if we shift the supply curve? The first one we're going to do is before my pen runs out. The first one we're going to do is the classical one. We always draw, when we're talking about equilibrium, we always draw an aggregate demand line. That's just one thing that you do. And a supply curve of some short run or long run, it doesn't matter. I'm going to draw them, find out what you do. Okay, so let's talk about the long run aggregate supply curve. Now we're talking about classical, so it works perfectly in a market, etc. So that's our standard price, P, and our standard output Y, and this is standard equilibrium 1. Now if we shift the long run aggregate supply curve to the right, doesn't matter where you put this, as long as you show a shift to the right, this corresponds with a lower price, P1, increase national output Y2, Y1, okay, mixed up sign. Now what can, oh yeah, equilibrium. Nah, I nearly messed that up. Okay, so how can we explain this diagram? Average price level actually. Well, it's a similar way to what we did before. So average price level, real GDP. So how can we explain this? Okay, well we use, again I'm going to go through the same explanation, so hopefully it will start sinking into your long-term memory. First thing we do is we state the obvious. So you state that the long run aggregate supply curve has shifted from LRAS to LRAS1. The first thing you do is explain the shift, or shifts, if it acts with a Z. Of course at the end that's how you spell it. If you spell it any other way I'm disappointed in you. So anyway, so long run aggregate supply curve shifts from LRAS to LRAS1. And then you explain why it shifts. Wait, is that? Sorry, just give me a second. Let's look at that. But let's just explain what's happening with change price. There we go. I guess you can do it either way actually, it doesn't matter which way you structure it, as long as you include yeah, so it shifts to the right from LRAS to LRAS1. You say why that is. Now, the classical long run aggregate supply curve shifts for, I'll just give you a few examples. It shifts because if there's an increase in healthcare, so workers work longer, can work longer, so the pension age is raised. This is an example of obviously economic growth, but the pension age, so they're more economically productive for longer, so that allows the long run aggregate supply curve to shift to the right. You could have an increase in raw materials, so if they find a new oil spot, for example, that means there's more raw materials they can plant obviously. Skills of the workers, so if the workers are more productive, unit cost decrease and they're more efficient, so they can get more from the resources they already have, for example. You could use technology as an example for that as well, same sort of reason. So yeah, so we've said the shift, we've said what it is, and now we say, well, P, the price has gone down from P to P1, and this is because there's been an extension in, there's been a movement along the aggregate demand curve from E to E1. This resulted in an increase in real national output from Y to Y1, and then you say your evaluative statement at the end. The increase, the decrease in the average price level and the increase in real national output is dependent on the shift of the long run aggregate supply curve. Yeah, so basically, to summarise, the perfect explanation is you state the shift, you state why it shifts, what occurs if shift, you state the price, you state the movement along, you state the movement along the either aggregate demand line, or increase in aggregate demand or decrease in aggregate demand, sort of like movement along it, or the supply curve, whatever you're moving along, sort of thing. And then you say the increase in real national output, and then this depends on the magnitude of. So that's your basics. So just to go over it again, the shift, why it shifts, the change in price, the movement along what curve, the increase in national output, and what it depends on. So it depends on the shift of the LRAS curve, the change in price and change in national output. So that's for every diagram, and I've explained that quite a few times now, so if it's not sinking in, it's probably your fault. I'm going to get in. Just got a bit of stuff there as well when I did it. So, that's good. I didn't rub it all out. So we've got rid of the basics there. Just redraw these individual bits here. Just give me a second. So it's not a very good amendment, but never mind. And I've rubbed out the word equilibrium a bit. Never mind. So we've done a shift of the long run aggregate supply. Oh great. Oh no, wait, sorry. I was looking at a wrong explanation there. Sorry about that. So, for the diagram of an increase in supply, now we've moved the supply curve of the long run aggregate supply for the classical economist. Now I'm going to do it for the Keynesian. So, we draw our same Keynesian a line, so LRAS, put our standard price level, P. Yeah. Oh wait, actually, sorry, let me redraw that. So a shift, we're doing shifts in them. So a shift just means it moves to the right. Now you don't actually need to just draw another diagram, another thing here. We can just carry it on from the other. That may look like an extension of one if you can see it, but the first one is LRAS1. Now it normally is a bit further over, but I'm just using the available board space I've got here. So we can say it's shifted to the right. Now we always draw our aggregate demand diagrams, as I said. So we'll first draw it where it's flat. Let's doesn't look perfectly. Never mind. We've got a standard price level P and a real national output of Y. Now let's shift it. Yeah, shift it. So shift grid one. The first one we need to do is it going through. Okay. 81. Now this is an increase in price. Oh, we've done two different price levels there. Yeah. Okay, two different price levels. Sorry, it's a bit confusing this one. I mean that's not a straight line. It probably should be. Never mind. So what we've got here, we've got price level P2, P1. Now as you can see, this is just comparing the two curves. If we were at LRAS, the first curve, then the first shift of the aggregate demand aggregate demand curve, would represent a price increase of P to P2. But as we've shifted the LRAS curve, what we've done is we've reduced the impact on price. And as you can see from what I'm doing now, we've increased price, but we've not increased it as much as the other curve, and this means we can increase production. Sorry. Wait. This is confusing the way I've drawn it up here. Sorry. Oh come on! Why have I drawn it like that? Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what labels I've given it so I don't mess it up for you. Oh god. Y2, what? Yeah, so Y2. Where's Y1? Yeah, I think this is what I was getting confused about. So that's Y2. And that's what I've just got confused about now. And that's Y3. Don't ask me why. So, as you can see, from the original curve, if we were doing from the original, we've got a price level P2 and a quantity demanded Y2. And if we were at a shifted curve, we would have a price level P1 and a real national output Y1. So as you can see, a lower price level, I mean, I will do some more analysis in this in a minute, but as you can see, at a lower price level, at lower levels of, real national output, the effect on prices is a lot less. So let's do another one where they're both vertical. Let's go through where they're both vertical. It's going to be a bit difficult because of the way I've drawn it. It's not quite. So I'm just going to have to change this in a minute. Yeah, sorry, just going to have to change this in a minute. Right, that's AD2. And this corresponds with a higher price level. Sorry, I'm just going to draw the prices on first for each one. Sorry, my hand is getting a bit bored now. P4. And what's that other one? P3. Right. And obviously this is a maximum output, so it corresponds with an output YF. And so is this. This corresponds with, yeah, that's correct, YF1. So hopefully you're starting to understand where I'm coming from here. If you're not, just give us a shout. No, I'm kidding. Just comment on the video. So that is one of the hardest shifts, I would say, to explain. I mean, I'm not 100% sure if I'm brutally honest about the way I've labelled that. But the diagram is right, just the labels here, like Y, Y2, etc. It's just mulling over the old noggin a little bit. So, you know, when you're explaining this diagram, you always explain the shift, explain the price, explain the shift, explain the price the one curve, explain the price another curve, explain why so you explain the shift, why it's shifted, the price, what it's moved along, sort of thing. Is that how I've explained it? Just do it as I was doing it at the start. My mind's gone completely shattered today. It's been a long day. So, as you can tell, losing the will to live. So that is your basic, your end to it. It's not basic, it's all that. Yeah, so if you get that, that's really good, but I don't know how I can explain it any more than that without confusing it. Hopefully you've enjoyed that, and we'll see you in the next one. There it goes. I'm sorry about maybe the quality of the video. Right, just put it down a second ago. Literally, I just put it down. Good. Okay. So, I've got the sheet here that I was pretty much attempting to go through. Now, it tells you the exact way of explaining the diagram. So, you say the increase of what it is and where it will shift it to, which is kind of what I said. It means more will be supplied at each level, or less, or whatever you want to, whatever you're measuring. And you say what that's caused by. You say the average price level will increase or fall, and that will reduce or increase national output, and the magnitude, and then obviously, yeah, so the overall thing is the shift, how much, the shift, where it shifts the curve, what curve, the changing the price, why it shifts the way it does. So, yeah, so as I was saying, overall, basically, what it is the shift, where it shifts it to, that will more or less will be supplied at each price level, why it shifts the way it does, will that move an extension or movement along the curve, and it depends on the magnitude. So they're the basic things. So the shift, the way, the curve, what curve's shifting and what it shifts to, if it's just leftwards or rightwards, the change in price, why it shifts the way it does, the change in real national output, and the magnitude, it depends on that. Hopefully that's all you need to know, and we'll see you in the next video.